He hadn't smiled in 6 years. Not since the woman he loved shattered him and left him buried in silence. Cold, calculated, and untouchable, millionaire CEO Alexander Kane built a fortress of glass and steel around his heart. But when Lena Brooks, his new personal assistant with a chaotic smile and zero sense of boundaries, waltzes into his world with a stubborn refusal to be ignored, the cracks begin to show. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The boardroom was silent, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning that pulsed through the vents like the breath of a sleeping beast. 12 people sat stiffly around a long, polished obsidian table. Eyes cast downward. Phones on mute. Not a single throat dared to clear. At the head of the table sat Alexander Kane, a name that carried weight in financial circles and sent junior executives into cold sweats. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His mere presence commanded a silence more absolute than any gavel or order could achieve. His tailored charcoal suit was crisp, not a single crease. A dark silk tie, no pattern, no color. But what drew the eye, what unsettled people most, was his face. Expressionless. Cold. Empty. Not cruel, just void. He flipped through a file, each page turned with robotic efficiency. When he finally spoke, it was with a voice even and clipped. The Milan pitch is unacceptable. It lacks vision. Cut the team. A tremor went through the room. One of the executives stammered. Sir, perhaps a revision? Cut. The team, he repeated, not raising his voice, but slicing through the suggestion with deadly finality. Next. No one argued. No one even sighed. They knew better. This was the Kane Tech Tower, and Alexander Kane was its immovable king, a man who hadn't cracked a smile in 6 years. Not since her. The elevator dinged as he exited the boardroom. The floor cleared before he even approached. Employees averted their eyes, scattering like fish when a shark approaches. No one spoke directly to him unless summoned. No one dared make small talk. The man was allergic to noise, allergic to warmth. He walked into his office. Penthouse level, glass walls with a panoramic view of the skyline, minimalist furniture, shades of steel and ice blue, more art gallery than workplace. The air smelled faintly of pine and expensive ink. The office was impeccable but lifeless. A single framed photo sat hidden inside his drawer. A younger Alexander stood with a woman, brilliant smile, golden curls, her arm wrapped tightly around his waist. He was smiling too. That rare, open, vulnerable kind of smile. She was the last person to ever see it. He hadn't touched the photo in years. She'd betrayed him, played him, manipulated him with careful sweetness and empty affection, only to be caught siphoning money into an account he didn't recognize. A private confrontation led to her confession. I never loved you, Alex. You were just convenient. He remembered the moment he stopped feeling anything. It wasn't the night she left. It was the morning after, when he looked in the mirror and felt nothing but silence. That was the day Alexander Kane buried every ounce of warmth he had. Since then, assistants had come and gone like seasonal interns. None lasted more than 90 days. Some quit after a week. Others were fired for something as small as a spelling error or a poorly brewed cup of coffee. His current assistant had just quit by email. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a forwarded resignation with the subject line. I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. He didn't blink. Just typed, accept resignation. HR to assign replacement. And click send. A knock sounded on the glass door. Mr. Kane. A timid voice called through the intercom. It was Marion, his longtime executive secretary. The only person he tolerated longer than 3 minutes. He didn't answer, just looked up. She's here. She. Your new personal assistant. Lena Brooks. He said nothing. He didn't care. Whoever she was, she'd be gone soon enough. The elevator doors parted with a soft chime on the top floor of Kane Tech's headquarters. revealing a splash of color that didn't belong. Lena Brooks stepped out, humming to herself as she adjusted the large sunflower pin in her unruly curly hair. She wore a mustard yellow blazer over a green dress covered in tiny white pineapples. On her feet were red flats, slightly scuffed at the toes. She looked like spring had walked into a cathedral of winter. Every head in the corridor turned. Some gawked. Others whispered. Lena didn't notice, or pretended not to. Her bright eyes scanned the office layout as she approached the marble reception desk. Behind it sat Marion, a woman with short gray hair, wire-framed glasses, and a look of cautious experience. "You must be Lena," Marion said, rising with a polite but tight smile. "That obvious?" Lena asked, grinning. Marion gave her the once-over. "You're not what I expected." "People keep saying that," Lena said cheerfully. "Mostly ex-boyfriends and one suspicious Uber driver." Marion blinked. "Well," she said, clearing her throat, "Mr. Kane is in his office. He doesn't like delays. Or noise. Or distractions of any kind." "Oh, perfect," Lena said, checking her reflection in her phone screen. "I'm basically a walking contradiction." Before Marion could protest, Lena had already turned and marched toward the CEO's door, large, black glass, and intimidatingly opaque. She paused briefly, gave her reflection a mock salute, and knocked twice. There was no answer. "Here we go," she muttered, pushing the door open. Alexander Kane sat behind a monolithic desk of dark wood and chrome, typing something on his laptop. He didn't look up. The office was silent except for the gentle tap of keys and the ticking of a minimalist wall clock. Lena stepped inside and closed the door behind her with a click. She stood there, hands clasped in front of her like a student summoned to the principal's office. Her eyes wandered across the room. No photos, no plants, not even a coat rack. The whole space was painfully immaculate. Alexander finally looked up. His eyes scanned her like a barcode. His expression remained unreadable. "You're Lena Brooks." "Guilty," she said, stepping forward. "Unless you were expecting another brightly dressed assistant with questionable fashion taste and an upbeat disposition." He didn't answer. Just stared. She stared back. Then, with a confident step, she extended her hand across the desk. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Kane." He didn't shake it. After a moment, Lena slowly retracted her hand and brushed it against her skirt. "Right. Not a handshake guy." "Got it." He finally spoke, his voice calm, cool, without inflection. "You're late. It's 8:59. I expected you at 8:45. "Well, I didn't want to peek too early," she said with a wink. Silence. He stared at her for another few seconds before returning his gaze to the screen. "You'll find the week's schedule in your email," he said flatly. "You'll sit outside this office. You'll speak when spoken to. No personal calls. No unnecessary chatter. No jokes." Lena's eyebrows raised. "No jokes?" she echoed, mock horrified. "But they're practically a medical necessity for me. Like coffee. Or oxygen." His eyes flicked up again. Lena leaned slightly forward. "You'll come around," she said, cheerful as ever. "Most people do. I'm what they call an acquired taste. Like olives. Or poison," he said. She grinned. "Ooh, he does jokes after all." He returned to his screen. Lena walked over to the assistant's desk just outside his glass wall. It was spotless, with a new office chair, a company laptop, and a single-potted succulent labeled, "Please don't kill me." She looked at the label, then at Alexander through the glass. He hadn't moved. "This plant gets me," she whispered. By 10 a.m., she had already reorganized her inbox, spilled half a latte onto her own notes, accidentally forwarded a board meeting memo to the janitorial staff, and made the building security guard laugh out loud with a story about how she once got locked in a storage closet at a petting zoo. Inside his office, Alexander barely looked up. But twice, just for a fraction of a second, the corner of his mouth twitched. At 11:17 a.m., Lena slipped a neon pink sticky note under his keyboard that read, "Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything." He didn't respond. At 11:46, she caught him reading it. The days that followed were quiet, at least on the surface. The kind of quiet where tension hangs beneath every exchanged glance. Where silence doesn't mean stillness, but something shifting under the surface. Alexander Kane maintained his usual rhythm. Morning meetings, digital reports, emotionless nods of approval or rejection. But something small, almost imperceptible, had begun to unsettle that rhythm. It started with a sound. A soft humming. Barely audible, but always there. Lena Brooks, seated just outside his glass-walled office, hummed as she worked, show tunes mostly. Sometimes 90s ballads. Sometimes something so strange he couldn't place it at all. It wasn't loud. Not disruptive. Just persistent. He didn't mention it. Not right away. But he noticed. Just like he noticed she had somehow decorated her desk in less than a week with trinkets. A lava lamp. A tiny cactus in a teacup. A framed picture of a dog wearing sunglasses. A mug that read, "I have a spreadsheet for my emotional damage." Every time he passed by, he expected her desk to be cleaned out. That she would have quit like the others. Instead, she looked up and greeted him every single time with a grin. "Morning, Mr. Kane. Would you like coffee or inner peace today?" He never answered, but he stopped walking past so quickly. On Wednesday, he overheard her talking to herself. "Well, Lena," she muttered, scanning her notes. "You've already attached the wrong file once, spilled coffee on the copier, and walked into the conference room while they were praying for quarterly losses. You are killing it." He turned his head slightly. She didn't know he was listening. The next day, she brought in a goldfish. "I'm naming him Alan," she announced to Marion at reception. "He seems like an Alan. Judgy. Quiet. But dependable." Alexander didn't comment. But that evening, as he passed by her desk on the way out, he paused in front of the bowl. The fish floated silently near the glass, its eyes large and blank. "Poor bastard," Alexander muttered. Lena turned in her chair. "You talking to me or Alan?" He didn't answer. But the next morning, Alan had a tiny castle in his bowl that wasn't there before. By Friday, the pink sticky notes were a regular feature. At first, just jokes. "I told my therapist about you. She says hi. Smile. Or at least blink in Morse code if you're in distress. Statistically, you're overdue for a laugh. Don't fight fate." He never responded. But he stopped throwing them away. Then came the mistake. Lena sent a report to the wrong department. An analytics breakdown that included a doodle of a penguin holding a protest sign that read, "What'll we do without proper data?" Alexander summoned her into his office. She walked in, hands behind her back like a child about to be scolded. "Mr. Kane, before you say anything, I would like to formally apologize to both you and the penguin community." He stared at her. "That report," he said, placing the paper in front of him, "was received by the legal team." "In my defense, legal could use some whimsy," she replied, trying not to smile. His stare didn't soften, but it also didn't harden. "Sit," he said. She obeyed, sliding into the chair across from him. "You've been here nearly 2 weeks. Feels longer, doesn't it? You're disorganized. Loud. Inattentive. Unconventional. You spill things. All true. You haven't quit yet. I also never cry in the office bathroom. That's gotta be a record." Alexander looked at her. Really looked at her. "You're not afraid of me." Lena tilted her head. "Should I be? Everyone else is." "Well," she said thoughtfully, "you're not a murderer. Or a taxidermist. You're just sad." His posture stiffened. "Excuse me?" "Not sad like pathetic," she clarified quickly. "Sad like a man who once loved someone and never really got to grieve. So you put on armor and called it work." Silence. Long and heavy. "You don't know anything about me," he said quietly. "No," she admitted. "But I see things. I feel people. I'm not something to fix, Miss Brooks." She met his gaze, steady, unblinking. "I'm not here to fix you," she said. "I'm just here to remind you you're still human. Even if you forgot." He said nothing, just picked up a pen and began to sign a document. "You're dismissed." She stood, but before she reached the door, he said, without looking up, What do you get when you cross an elephant with a rhino? Lena blinked, slowly turned back toward him. I don't know, she said cautiously. He looked up. Elefino. She stared. Then a sound escaped her throat, a stunned laugh that turned into a giggle. No way, she whispered. You just made a pun. It's from your sticky note. Tuesday. That's a callback. You just did comedic structure, sir. He returned to his paperwork. As she stepped back out to her desk, she whispered to herself. There's hope for you yet, Mr. Kane. And behind the glass wall, unseen, a man who hadn't smiled in 6 years ran his thumb once over the corner of his mouth, just to check. It started with thunder. Late on a Tuesday afternoon, the first growl rolled over the skyline like a warning, vibrating through the glass panels of the Kane Tech Tower. Outside, gray clouds crowded the horizon, and by 6, the city was drenched in sheets of relentless rain. By 7:12 p.m., most of the building was empty, except for 2 offices, one lit brightly, sterile, and efficient. The other, warm and softly glowing, cluttered with sticky notes and the occasional hum of a voice trying to stay in tune. Alexander Kane sat in his office, collar loosened, sleeves rolled to the forearms, reviewing quarterly acquisition data. The numbers made sense. They always did. But tonight, he found it harder to focus. His eyes kept drifting beyond the figures to the blur of movement just outside the glass. Lena Brooks, in her corner, was dancing. Sort of. She had earbuds in, and she was swaying, poorly, to a rhythm only she could hear. Occasionally, she raised her arms like a conductor, pointing toward her computer as if it were performing a symphony. She had stayed behind to fix a presentation she'd botched earlier in the week. Her own decision. He hadn't asked. But something about her presence made the storm feel less intrusive. A bolt of lightning cracked across the sky, and the lights flickered. Then, without warning, the entire floor went dark. The building groaned in response as emergency backup lighting kicked in, dim, amber-toned strips lining the walls like glowing veins. The rain intensified, drumming against the glass like fingers on a drum. Alexander stood and stepped into the hallway. Lena was crouched beside her desk, rummaging through a drawer with her phone flashlight held between her teeth. You're not one of those everybody panic types, are you? She asked around the phone. He folded his arms. No, I prefer controlled chaos. She pulled out 2 emergency candles and held them up triumphantly. Corporate survival kit. You'd be surprised what I've accumulated. Within minutes, they were in his office, the desk now bathed in soft flickering candlelight. A strange intimacy settled between the glow and the shadows. The storm outside roared, but inside it was quiet. Warm. Lena plopped down on the leather chair opposite his desk, holding 2 disposable cups. Guess what I found? She grinned. He didn't answer. Instant noodles, she said, holding them like sacred treasure. Electric kettle still works on backup. You hungry? He hesitated. I don't eat processed food. You also don't smile. I think it's time we break some rules. She handed him a cup without waiting for approval, then turned back toward the kettle. He watched her. She moved so effortlessly, so unaware of the rigidity around her. She laughed at her own jokes. She stirred noodles with a pencil. She wasn't trying to impress or manipulate. She was just there. Real. They ate in silence for a while, sitting across from each other, candlelight dancing between them. Then she asked, what was her name? He froze. Lena didn't look at him when she asked. She kept stirring the noodles. But she knew. You don't have to answer, she added softly. I see it sometimes. The way you check out of conversations. Like there's a memory looping behind your eyes. Alexander's jaw clenched. His fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. Her name was Elise, he said finally, surprising even himself. We were together 5 years. Engaged for 1. She was smart. Charming. Perfect, really. Until I found out she'd been draining money through shell accounts. Lena looked up, gently. Did she ever say why? He nodded once. She said I was a good investment. Lena flinched. Ouch! She was right, he added bitterly. I gave everything. She took what she needed and left. Silence settled again. Not heavy, just present. Lena looked down at her noodles, then back up. You know, she said slowly, that's why I hate people who fake laugh. It's theft. Real laughter? That's something sacred. You share it when you feel safe. Alexander raised an eyebrow. And you think laughter is sacred? Absolutely, she said, leaning back. Smiling, laughing, crying, it's all proof we're not machines. Even bad jokes mean we still believe in joy. Even when we're hurting. There was a pause. Then Lena looked him dead in the eye and said, Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Alexander gave her a dry look. Don't. Because he was. Outstanding in his field, he finished monotone. Lena gasped. You knew it. Unfortunately. She grinned and shook her head. You're secretly a dad joke addict. I see it now. I'm not. Oh, you are. There was a beat. Then, without warning, Alexander laughed. It was short. Low. A little hoarse from disuse. Lena froze mid-bite. Her eyes widened. Wait. Did you just? No. You did. You totally laughed. It was air. Escaping. Randomly. You snorted. I did not snort. You absolutely. I will fire you. She smiled at him across the desk, lit by candlelight, lightning flashing behind them. The storm continued to rage. But for the first time in 6 years, inside the office of Alexander Kane, there was laughter. Real. Unforced. Sacred. The following Monday, Alexander Kane arrived at the office at precisely 8 a.m., as he always did. Only this time, something was different. His tie was navy, not black. His cufflinks weren't the usual chrome squares, but small, silver anchors. He didn't consciously choose them. They had been a gift, unopened in a drawer for years. He wasn't sure why he picked them today. Habit was being replaced by curiosity. As he passed through the floor, people still lowered their gazes, still held their breath. But Lena noticed it immediately, how his steps weren't as clipped, how his jaw didn't tense quite as hard. He paused near her desk, glanced at her coffee mug. World's okayest assistant, he read aloud deadpan. She looked up from her computer. You noticed. I'm working toward decentish. He said nothing, but there was a flicker behind his eyes, something almost mischievous. Then he added, Bring me your meeting notes. And one of those granola bars you hide behind your stapler. She blinked. You saw those. You're not as stealthy as you think. As he stepped into his office, Lena sat back, eyes wide, as if witnessing a bear politely request tea. Over the next 2 weeks, small things changed. He stopped correcting her typos mid-sentence. He began replying to her jokes, not laughing, not yet, but responding. He started pausing in front of office windows, staring out for longer stretches, as if remembering something he'd forgotten to miss. Then came the charity gala. Kane Tech hosted one every year, more as a PR formality than genuine interest. Alexander always attended, alone, rigid, and impenetrable. No mingling. No toasts. Just a 5-minute speech and a swift exit. This time, Lena offered to help prepare the slideshow. You'll need a warmer tone, she said, typing quickly. And maybe less of the world domination vibe. I'm not giving a TED talk, he replied. No, she said, tilting her head. You're showing people who you are now. Or at least, who you might be becoming. He didn't answer. But when the night of the gala came, he asked if she'd attend. As a guest, she asked, stunned. As a buffer. I'll take it, she beamed. She arrived in a navy jumpsuit covered in tiny stars and a glittery headband. He wore his usual suit but with no tie, and, for the first time, no scowl. They stood side by side at the entrance, Lena whispering names into his ear like a mischievous teleprompter. That's Barbara from marketing. Likes dogs. Hates open-plan offices. That's Glenn from finance. Thinks you're a vampire. I'm sorry, what? You've never aged in 6 years. There's a spreadsheet circulating. He chuckled. Just once. But it was real. Later that night, Lena found him alone by the bar, drink in hand, watching the crowd. You did well, she said softly, approaching. Everyone thinks I'm dying, he muttered. Why? I smiled. Twice. Well, don't worry. I'm here to keep your reputation of menace intact. He glanced at her, his eyes softening. Lena. She turned, surprised by the use of her name. He almost never used it. Yes. I haven't felt this, normal in a long time. She smiled but said nothing. She knew. Words weren't always needed in moments like this. But something else was changing too. Alexander had started asking questions. Real ones. Not about spreadsheets or revenue projections, but about her. One afternoon, as she rearranged the books on his shelf just to annoy him, he asked without looking up from his screen. What made you this way? She blinked. Annoying. Open. She paused. My dad was quiet, she said after a moment. Kind but hidden. He worked too hard, kept things in. When he passed, I realized how many of his smiles we missed because he thought vulnerability made him weak. She looked over at him. So I decided I'd never let joy wait for permission. I give it freely, even if no one's ready. He didn't respond, but his hands had stopped typing. She left a sticky note on his desk that day. It simply read, You're allowed to be happy, even if it scares you. The biggest shift came unexpectedly. It was during an elevator ride. They were heading down for a lunch meeting, alone in the lift, when it jolted suddenly. Not violently, just enough to halt. The lights flickered. Lena laughed nervously. Okay, that's not ideal. Alexander calmly pressed the emergency button. We'll be fine, he said. She looked up at him. You're surprisingly chill for someone who usually fires people for breathing too loud. He turned to her slowly. You make it hard to stay cold. Her smile faded, not because she was hurt, but because she felt the weight in those words. Then, as the elevator beeped and resumed movement, he looked down at her. Lena. She met his gaze. Thank you. For what? For reminding me that I'm not finished. The elevator opened, but they didn't move. He looked at her differently now. Not like an employee, not like a nuisance, but like someone who had seen him at his worst and still stayed. And in her eyes, he saw a man worth rebuilding. The Kane Tech offices were unusually bright that morning, as if the sun itself had decided to offer a rare endorsement of change. Alexander Kane had arrived smiling. Not wide, not showy, but enough for the front desk assistant to pause mid-email and wonder if she'd hallucinated it. He had traded the usual gray suit for something lighter, a tailored navy with an open collar. No tie. He had even brought Lena coffee, wordlessly placing it on her desk with an awkward, You like hazelnut, right? She had stared at the cup like it might grow legs and dance. I do, she stammered. Wow. You're evolving. Like a Pokemon. That morning, something in the air felt good. Light. Dangerously light. It was late afternoon when it happened. Alexander had just returned from a strategy session when he passed the open conference room. Laughter. Not unusual. His team had grown more relaxed since Lena's influence spread like sun through a dusty room. He paused. And then he heard it. His name. She's practically reprogramming him, someone said, chuckling, not maliciously but carelessly. Oh yeah, another voice joined in. He went from Ice King to Flirt God in, what, a month? Honestly, a third voice added, if she plays her cards right, she might end up with a private island and an NDA. That voice. Female. Familiar. He turned the corner and stepped inside. The laughter died instantly. 3 executives stared at him, guilt blooming on their faces like ink in water. Mr. Kane, the woman said, her voice small now. He didn't say a word, just looked at her. Then the others. His eyes, once warming, were ice again. He didn't confront Lena that day. Didn't even look at her. When she dropped off his post-lunch schedule, he nodded. Nothing more. No sarcasm. No smirk. She tilted her head, watching him. Everything okay? Yes, he said, without looking up. The old Alexander Kane had returned like a ghost re-inhabiting its body. That night, Lena sat in her apartment, trying to shake the unease. She scrolled through her phone, hovered over his contact, typed a message. Did I do something wrong? Then deleted it. She waited. And waited. No reply. The next morning, the air was different. Heavy. Not a storm. Just a silence that scraped against the walls. Lena walked into the office to find her desk emptied. Not cleared, emptied. Her lava lamp gone. Her mug. Her sticky notes. Even Alan the goldfish was missing. Her heart thudded. She marched straight to Marion at reception. "My desk," she said, voice calm but tight. "Where is everything?" Marion hesitated. "Mr. Kane requested it be returned to inventory." Lena blinked. "Inventory? He said you'd understand." "Understand? Understand what?" She marched to his door and knocked, sharp, purposeful. "Come in," came the cold reply. She stepped inside. He was behind his desk, sleeves rolled down, tie back in place. Controlled. Perfect. Empty. "You cleared my desk," she said, not accusing, just stating. He didn't look up. "I thought it was time to return the space to its original function." "I don't understand. Did I cross a line?" "No." "Then what's happening?" He paused, then looked up, finally meeting her eyes. "I overheard something yesterday. A conversation." She nodded slowly. "Okay." 3 of my employees. Discussing how you were changing me. Suggesting there might be ulterior motives. That you were manipulating your way into something more than a job. Lena's face stiffened. "You believe them?" "I didn't say I did. But you're acting like it." He stood now, rounding the desk. "It doesn't matter what I believe. Perception is reality in this business. I can't afford distractions." She swallowed. "I'm a distraction? You've made yourself one." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Then she said, "You smiled. You laughed. You opened up. And now you're punishing me for that. I'm protecting what's mine." "No, you're hiding again. The moment you felt something real, you ran. And I'm the easiest thing to cut loose." His voice was colder than she'd ever heard it. "This was always temporary." Lena looked at him for a long moment. Then nodded. "No, it wasn't. You just never let yourself hope it could be." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You told me once you weren't finished. I believed that. I really did. But maybe you don't want to be rebuilt. Maybe you just want to be left alone in your ruins." She left, the sound of the door clicking shut behind her more final than any slam. That night, the building was quiet again. Alexander sat alone in his office, surrounded by silence. He opened the drawer. The photo of Elise was still there. He looked at it. Then slowly, carefully, he placed it face down. And next to it, he set a neon pink sticky note he had found stuck to the back of a file cabinet that morning. It read, "You don't have to stay broken just because it's familiar." It had been 10 days. 10 days without Lena Brooks. 10 days since her laugh stopped echoing through the hallways. 10 days since the sticky notes vanished, since the air in Kane Tech grew heavy again, like someone had turned gravity up just enough for everyone to feel it in their bones. But most of all, 10 days since Alexander Kane had spoken more than necessary. He went about his duties like clockwork. Emails, meetings, reports, silent nods, blank expressions. No one asked questions. They were used to the old Alexander. But it wasn't the same this time. He wasn't cold. He was empty. It was as if something had been woken, only to be buried alive again. On the 11th day, he opened her HR file. Not to delete it. Not to reassign the position. Just to see her handwriting on the form again. Lena Brooks, emergency contact. My big sister, just in case I try anything too spontaneous, like moving to Peru. Hobbies, humor. And collecting people's weirdness. He smiled painfully. And that's when he saw it. Tucked between pages of scheduling data was a note she must have forgotten to remove. One of her sticky notes. Slightly crumpled. Faded. "If one day you wake up and realize you miss me, come find me. I won't be waiting. But I won't be far." He read it twice. Then once more. And then he stood up. That evening, after dark, he walked through the city with no driver, no plan. Just the note in his pocket and her voice, bright, relentless, human, echoing in his head. He didn't know where she lived. But he remembered something. A passing mention over lunch weeks ago. I help out at this tiny community theater sometimes, just backstage stuff. It's chaotic. Smells like sawdust and old dreams. I love it. He found the name, the Loft Lantern. He called. No answer. He went there anyway. The building was small, wedged between a laundromat and a bike shop. The marquee read, "Wed night rehearsal, do not enter, unless you brought snacks." Alexander pushed the door open. It creaked loudly. Inside, the air was warm, dusty, filled with the sounds of off-key singing and the smell of popcorn and glue. No one noticed him at first. Then a voice called from backstage, muffled. "If you're here to criticize our acting, get in line behind my mother." He stepped forward. And then she appeared. Lena. Hair pinned up messily, sleeves rolled, a clipboard in one hand and a fake sword in the other. She was scolding someone about stage blocking while chewing a red licorice stick. She turned. She froze. For the first time since their goodbye, their eyes met. She didn't smile. Not right away. He stepped closer. She didn't speak. "Hi," he said quietly. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. "I saw what I became without you," he continued. "And it wasn't who I want to be." Still nothing. He swallowed. "You were right. I ran. I hurt you. I told myself it was about control, about protecting the company, but really it was fear. I was terrified that letting you in meant giving someone the power to destroy me again." She slowly lowered the clipboard. "But you didn't destroy me," he said, stepping forward. "You reminded me what it felt like to be alive. You accused me of manipulating you," she said softly. "You made me feel like everything we built was fake." "I know," he said. "And I hate that I made you doubt your heart. You were the only real thing I've had in years." A beat passed. Then two. "You're not forgiven," she said. "I know. And I'm not coming back to sit at your desk and pretend we're fine. I'm not asking you to." She folded her arms. "Then why are you here?" He took a breath. And for the first time, Alexander Kane didn't calculate his answer. "I'm here to say I was wrong," he said. "And that I miss you. And that I bought a flamingo shirt." She blinked. "What?" "It's hideous," he added. "Hot pink. Has tiny little birds wearing sunglasses. I think it burns the eyes." She stared. "And I signed up for salsa lessons. Because you said it would loosen me up. And because I want to try things that scare me. Like being seen. Like feeling joy without waiting for the other shoe to drop." Lena stepped forward. "You're serious? I've never been more. And you're not here to make me your assistant again?" "No. I'm here because you changed me. And because I want to be the kind of man who deserves that change." She looked at him. Deeply. Like she was searching for the lie. And then finally, "Okay," she said. "One condition." "Name it." "You wear the flamingo shirt. First salsa class. Full audience. No backing out." He cracked a smile. "Deal." And then, she laughed. Big, bright, full-hearted. It hit him like light breaking through storm clouds. He laughed too. Not a chuckle. A real, unapologetic laugh. The kind that shakes dust off your bones. The entire theater turned toward them, confused. Lena waved them off. "Sorry. He's new to joy." Later that night, they stood under the marquee, side by side, watching the rain fall gently on the sidewalk. "Do you think," she said, "you'll ever stop being afraid?" "I hope not," he replied. She raised an eyebrow. "Because being afraid," he continued, "means I'm alive again." She took his hand, carefully, deliberately. He didn't flinch. She smiled. And this time, he smiled back. Not for her. Not for anyone. For himself. And it stayed. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.